I'm Grahame Lynch, and today we're going to be talking about the fascinating world of the OpenSync ecosystem. I'm joined by Niall Robinson, who's the OpenSync commercial lead from Plume, all the way from Denver, Colorado. Welcome.
Good to meet you, Grahame. Good to be here.
Good. Okay, let's start from the start. OpenSync was developed in 2018, and it's now flourished into quite a rich ecosystem. What exactly is OpenSync, and what is Plume's role in it?
Good opening question. So yes, Plume published OpenSync in 2018. It actually started off as some internal software that Plume had developed. We decided that it better served the industry to open source that software. So it is now a full open source solution. So what is OpenSync? It's software that connects a cloud system, in Plume's case, the Plume Cloud, with the hardware that's in a customer's home, in a consumer's home. And it allows the cloud to efficiently control that hardware, to monitor various parameters, and then using that information, using algorithms that run up in the cloud, to deliver things like, superb Wi-Fi performance, secure browsing, for example, even motion detection, right? We can do motion detection of the human body moving around with the Wi-Fi signals in the home. So Plume's built a lot of the sort of plumbing, if you like, inside OpenSync. But, we do have a wider group of companies that also contribute to this. As I said, it's open sourced.
Okay, well, let's go through the benefits of OpenSync, first of all. And I'm guessing they're quite discrete, depending on where you are in the ecosystem, but if you're a supplier or a telco. Can you take me through some of the benefits of OpenSync?
Yeah, for sure. So as you mentioned, there's multiple people or companies, let's say, company types in the ecosystem of delivering something, delivering service into a consumer home. Kind of the way I think about it, if I think about the very bottom, the fundamental part of the whole stack, you've got some chipset vendors. Yeah, so multiple chipset vendors all supplying into the Wi-Fi space. For them, OpenSync allows the whole stack that sits on top of that chipset to fully utilize all the networking capabilities of that chipset in a standardized way, right? With a standard set of APIs, standard set of messaging from the chipset. It eliminates porting for those chipset vendors, which is a huge resource savings for them. And it really opens up their addressable market, right? So with OpenSync sitting on top of the chipset, you can actually mix and match multiple chipsets as part of the same in-home Wi-Fi network from different vendors. So instead of being locked in, somebody's chosen, a particular chipset vendor, and they're locked into that vendor. Nope, the market is open for all vendors. So that's kind of the bottom of the stack. Then, those chipsets live inside a box, and that's, usually produced by ODMs. For them, the ODMs, now they've developed a box that has software on board with OpenSync that allows innovative new services to be delivered. So you have, a platform that you can add new services to. So it's not just a one-shot deal that you only get these X number of services and that's it. Nope, OpenSync's a platform, you can add new services to it. So that increases the competitive value of that device, because it's not now just talking about the feeds and speeds and how many radios and whatever it might be of that piece of hardware. It's around the services that could be supported on that hardware. It reduces their software development expenses to get to that same level of capability. Also expands their available market. Again, same thing as the chipsets. You could mix and match different ODM devices in the same deployment.
Okay.
Sitting on top of that, you've got services. Think of it like the App Store kind of companies. So if you are an IoT vendor, a motion detection vendor, a security vendor, et cetera, If what you need for your app to work is integrated into OpenSync, then you can launch at scale immediately, right, across all of these hardware platforms. If you do the cloud integration, you can get the information from the device and bring and send down whatever it needs to be controlled on the device via OpenSync. You get immediate scale with the number of OpenSync homes. Let's think of it that way, that are already out there. I think we're over 30 million homes right now at Plume. So faster time to revenue as well, right? And also at that scale. And then finally, sitting at the top of the stack are the communication service providers. We've seen in certain markets, certainly kind of the traditional, voice, video bundles kind of really diminishing, let's say. And so this allows new services, new interesting value-added services to be delivered to their consumers, so that they can actually reduce churn, reduce support calls because of the capabilities of the Plume system, the Plume cloud. So there's value at every layer, I think, is the right way to think about this.
Okay. Now, one of the benefits to OpenSync is that it has, for want of a better term, a backwards compatibility. Now, that seems pretty handy right now, given there's chip shortages and supply chain constraints.
Exactly. You have multiple generations of Wi-Fi, for example. And you can have some backward compatibility with Wi-Fi. So, Wi-Fi 6 is out now. 6E is coming very soon. Wi-Fi 5 dominated for quite some time. So you can have, from a Wi-Fi perspective, multiple generations living in the home. What OpenSync does is provides that backward compatibility on that infrastructure for the services that you want to deliver, in the home. So you've got not only hardware backward compatibility, but also service backward compatibility across that home. The other sort of big impact right now, we have there are some supply constraints, that have come across because of COVID on the chipset sector, particularly. It's not just in the chipset sector, but particularly in the chipset sector. So being able to, take an older device potentially, right, and upgrade that with OpenSync, and then bring in, newer devices. So you could take an older gateway, put OpenSync on that gateway. You don't have to, upgrade your hardware in order to get those services on or into the home. Right, it's sort of an upcycling effect, if you like. Having an old box, being able to do new tricks, essentially. So it's definitely one of the benefits that we're seeing for our customers.
Okay, can you expand on who else is actually in the OpenSync ecosystem?
So there's a fairly strong supporting cast of players at various places in the ecosystem, right? So you've got the chipset manufacturers themselves. So they're, I can't mention them all, but companies like Broadcom, Qualcomm, and others, are putting OpenSync into their SDKs, right? So it makes it very much easier for the ODMs who pick those devices to then, integrate OpenSync into their devices. And the list of ODMs that are part of the OpenSync ecosystem is growing and growing. I think we have upwards of 15, somewhere around that, 15 ODMs actively integrating OpenSync into their devices. So we have a strategic partnership program for ODMs that helps them onboard OpenSync into their devices. So that's adding, multiple ODMs per quarter into that group. Then you've got also other organizations that are looking at OpenSync. So Telecom Infra Project adopted OpenSync. That's a large industry association. I think over 500 members, but there's a Wi-Fi group in there that adopted OpenSync, and it's part of their software stack. for their open sourced, open hardware, white box hardware project. And then companies that are actually contributing code into OpenSync. Some of our largest customers, like Charter, do that. Some of our largest hardware partners, like Sagemcom, contribute code into OpenSync. So quite a large ecosystem, and honestly growing, right? Every quarter, somebody else is coming in and joining.
Okay, so final question. I was looking at some of the commentary around OpenSync, and one of the more profound that I saw was the comment from your CEO that OpenSync will do for home entertainment what the SIM card did for the mobile phone. Can you elaborate on that analogy?
Yeah, exactly. I've used that analogy in my conversations too. I stole it from Fari. Yes, so exactly. Think about what the SIM card did. It really separated the piece of hardware in your hand, the phone, so let's say, from the service provider or the services that you were looking to have on that phone, right? So if I wanted to switch a provider because another provider had a different set of services, I would switch out that SIM card. So OpenSync does that same sort of level setting, that separation of the hardware in your hand, or in this case in your home, from the services that you will have delivered into your home, or the CSP will deliver into your home. That's really where we separate also the devices, typical speeds and feeds, how many megabits or hundreds of megabits will it support, and how many radios and everything else, from actually what you use that device for. You use it for parental controls, for example, right? In terms of website content that's allowed or not allowed on certain devices. You use it for the security for your surfing when you're online. As I said, we added motion detection as another feature there. So OpenSync really says, okay, if I have a provider that offers all of these kinds of services, all I need is a box that has OpenSync, or in this case, think of it the analogy of the SIM card, that will connect me to that service provider, and I can get all of those services. So it's really that separation of service from the hardware.
Okay, well, with that, we'd like to thank you very much for joining us today on CommsDay Live.
Glad to be here.
Bye-bye.